welcome to Saints of the Catholic Church. Tonight, we are going to be examining St. Ignatius Loyola.
Examen's my middle name.
Examen is not any part of your name. St. Ignatius was born in 1491 as Inigo Lopez de la Hoya, the youngest of 13 children. His mother died when he was a young boy, and soon after that, he was sent to be the page of his cousin, who was the treasurer of the Kingdom of Castile.
Yes, my first endeavor into service. I wish I had paid more attention.
Will you stop adding commentary? You're supposed to be doing dramatic recreations.
I've had nothing to dramatically recreate.
Well, we had to set things up first. But don't worry, dramatic recreations are coming now. In his youth as an aristocrat, Inigo dreamed of becoming a knight. As in the stories of El Cid and the Knights of Camelot, he trained and worked toward that goal, and by the age of 17, he had joined the army. He had also started going by Ignatius, the more formal name of Inigo. As a young soldier, he would strut around in tight-fitting hose and boots, with a sword and a dagger at his waist.
Woo-wee!
Ah, yes, the folly of my youth.
He also became very good with the sword and started developing a reputation as a duelist. One such example of his dueling skill, he fought a Moor who denied the divinity of Jesus. In the duel, he ran the Moor through, killing him.
I'm not quite proud of this moment. Do we need to reenact it?
Yes, we have to reenact this. This is part of your life. Also remember, you were proud at the time. Go.
Good point. Here is my counterpoint. No rebuttal? Wait, I didn't say that.
Poetic license. It makes for a much better and exciting story. Ignatius continued building his reputation as he fought in many battles without injury. That was until the Battle of Pamplona. There he was hit by a cannonball.
Medic! Medic!
Which damaged one leg and broke the bone in his other leg. After his injuries, he returned to his father's home in Loyola to heal. At first, they didn't think he'd survive.
That probably hurt his leg.
But he did start to heal. He underwent several surgeries that were extremely painful. And this was in the age before anesthetics.
And I did not cry. I may have fainted or passed out, but I did not cry.
While he was healing, there wasn't much to do. He did have 2 books. One book was on the life of Christ, the other on the life of the saints. He read both of these books, and the stories fueled his imagination. The rest of the time, he daydreamed about the future. Sometimes, he daydreamed about his life as a noble, becoming a famous general, and winning the heart of a certain woman. At other times, he daydreamed about the lives of the saints and becoming a saint himself. He noticed that all of his daydreams brought him joy while he was dreaming, but found that the joy for the worldly daydreams left him as soon as he stopped dreaming. But the joy from the saintly dreams remained with him for long after the dream. It took him about a year to fully recover. And by then, he resolved to lead the life of self-denying labor and emulate the heroic life of his St. Francis of Assisi, his major hero.
Best decision I ever made.
Once he was able to travel, he walked to a Benedictine monastery and hung his military garments up before a statue of Mary.
Ow. Ow.
He then went and spent several months in a cave, praying for over 7 hours a day, and developing the spiritual exercises he is known for today.
Ow. Ow. Ow.
After his time in solitude, he made a pilgrimage to the Holy Land, where he wanted to remain. However, he wasn't allowed to remain in the Holy Land for very long, so he returned to Spain. Upon returning to Spain, Ignatius realized that he hadn't had much formal education as a child. Being an aristocrat, he didn't need an education to survive. But he knew that if he was going to preach the gospel, he needed a formal education. So he enrolled in the University of Spain. And then, at the age of 38, he transferred to the University of Paris. By the time he was 44, after many hilarious adventures, he had been ordained a priest, and he had obtained a master's degree. It took a very long time.
Better late than never.
Dun-dun. While he was at the University of Paris, he developed a lot of friendships, and he taught them his spiritual exercises. Then, on the morning of the 15th of August, 1534, in the chapel of the Church of St. Peter, at Montmartre, Loyola, he and his 6 companions, St. Francis Xavier, St. Peter Farber, Alfonso Salmero, Diego Leonez, Nicolas Bobadilla, and Simão Rodrigues of Portugal, met and took upon themselves the solemn vows of their lifelong work. Ignatius of Loyola was the main creator and the first superior general of the Society of Jesus. As a religious organization in the Catholic Church, whose members, known as Jesuits, serve the Pope as missionaries. He is remembered as a talented spiritual director. He was vigorous in opposing the Protestant Reformation and promoting the following Counter-Reformation. He was beatified and canonized and received the title of saint on March 12th, 1622. He is the patron saint of the provinces of Guipúzcoa and Biscay, as well as the Society of Jesus itself. Ignatius Loyola wrote spiritual exercises, a simple 200-page set of meditations, prayers, and various other mental exercises from 1522 to 1524. The exercises in the book were designed to be carried out over a period of 28 to 30 days. This has been the life of St. Ignatius Loyola. We thank you for joining us for Saints of the Catholic Church.
Woo-woo!
Again, I'm going to kind of recap about St. Ignatius a little bit, just in case you forgot some of it. But yeah, he was born in Spain in 1491. He was the youngest of 13 children, and his mother died, but he was still raised as kind of high class in Spain. And he became a soldier when he was 18 years old. He got injured in battle. The cannonball broke his legs, and he was laying in bed. And during that time when he was laying in bed, he started reading about God. He started reading about the saints, and this kind of changed everything for him. He started to have really great desires for God, which was new to him because his whole life he just had really big desires to serve his country, and which is a very good thing, I think, as well. But he was kind of going more for the worldly things than anything. And in his time in this bed, he started to be able to learn how to discern what was from God and what God was wanting him to do, and what was from himself and what he wanted to do, like without really caring about what God thinks. And he kind of termed this discernment of spirits, discerning what was good and bad in his heart. And one of the beautiful gifts he gave us was his spirituality, was that whole spiritual exercises, which you can still do today. Like people do that. Like they go on a 30-day silent retreat and practice all these exercises, which is really cool. But one thing I'm going to talk about tonight is called the Examen Prayer, and it's a prayer that he gave us. So, we have the Rosary, we have like adoration, we have, the Divine Mercy Chaplet, like all these different forms of prayer and ways to pray. And the Examen Prayer is a different type of prayer. And the first thing, it kind of sounds like an examination of conscience, doesn't it? Like by the name. So it's not that at all. An examination of conscience is a prayer that you do before you go to confession to just think about the sins that you committed before the last time you went to confession. And that's a great prayer to do, but what the daily, or the examen prayer is, you do that partially, but you also look through the good parts of your day, the ways that God has given you gifts, and you go through like those movements in your heart, kind of how Saint Ignatius did that, how he, had these great desires, and then he would go and pray on it and ask God, like, what do these mean? And so that's kind of what the examen prayer is. And there's different ways you can pray it, just like with anything. I think everyone has a different spirituality, kind of. I know I do. I pray the examen prayer differently than Jess would pray it or Marianne would pray it. And so St. Ignatius, he gave us kind of a basic format on how to pray this prayer. The first step in this prayer, which should be the first step in every single prayer, is to invite God into it, to ask him to make his presence known to us and to guide us through this prayer. And so that's the very first step you should do always. The second step in this prayer is to look back on your day and give thanks for the gifts. Okay, so when we do this, think about, before we even start it too, just to have another picture in your mind, think about this prayer as like God sitting with you, Jesus standing next to you, and you just talking to him, going through your day like you would with your best friend or your parents, if you talk to your parents like that. But yeah, so look back at your day and thank him for all the gifts that he's given you, whether it's big or small. There's some days where nothing really good happens to me except for maybe someone smiles or says hi, and that's a gift, that we can be thankful for as well. Or even like the big ones, your team won a state championship, or someone, I don't know, gave you a lot of money and it's really cool and you're happy, so it's a gift too. You can be thankful for that. And then this one is where we kind of have to be patient with, and we kind of have to be careful with too, is we ask the Holy Spirit to reveal all the sins in our heart. And I say we have to be careful with it because this isn't a time to beat yourself up over what you did wrong throughout the day, right? This is a time to sit with God and be like, all right, I really messed up here, and I want you to take it away from me, and just take it. And that's what this part of the prayer is you just going through the day and kind of saying, okay, I messed up here, and I'm sorry, but can you just take this from me and forgive me from it? And so that's the third step of the prayer. And then the fourth step that you can kind of do if you want is where it gets a little bit more intense is I was talking about the discernment of spirits, where you look over the emotions or your feelings from that day and your deeper desires from that day, and you just think about them and how God is moving through them. It's kind of hard to explain, but that's what this part's for, is to sit there with God again and to invite him to explore deeper what's going on in your heart. Yeah, I don't know. It just takes practice to kind of figure out, what's going on in your life, but that's the next step, and it's good too. And then the last step you can do is to resolve to become better for the next day, to resolve to love God more than you did the day prior. So this prayer is obviously something you should be doing every day if you want. And I gotta be honest, when I remember being in the life team, and my other friends that were seniors, they were like, oh yeah, don't really want to go anymore. They kind of spoke about everything that I need to hear. Everything's super kind of boring for me now. This is when I was a senior. I heard that a lot, and I felt that a lot. And this prayer, it might sound boring because I'm not the most entertaining guy. I know that. I'm not the most exciting dude in the world. But if you really want to advance in your spiritual life, this examen prayer is what you need to start doing. Taking a 15, 20, 30 minutes out of your day to practice it, it can really change your life. Because I don't know if you guys know, but I was in the seminary for 3 years, And this prayer is like what they pounded into us most. The Examen Prayer, Ignatian spirituality, like that was what they knew was going to help form us into men who will later become priests, if that's what we're called to. And so it's like, this prayer that we're like teaching you tonight is really cool. It's really amazing. But it takes practice, like anything. If you guys are in sports or in theater or very good at school, like it takes time. You know, it takes a lot of your effort to become good at it. And it's the same thing with this prayer. And kind of, I don't know, go along those same lines, like there's different ways to pray this prayer, but the general rhythm of it is to invite God to be with you, you know, to go through the graces, to go through the sins, to ask God to forgive you, to become resolved for the next day. And there's different ways, there's different people who have written different steps, and those are all good, but those general rhythms are like what you're looking for. Just from taking the time to sit down and look at your day, it's crazy what can happen for you. You start to recognize throughout the day that, holy crap, God does actually love me. Even if it's not these crazy spiritual experiences that happen like every single day, like God still is moving in my life and He loves me. Because when you form this habit of doing this prayer, like you start to recognize and you start to remember like, oh, I'm going through this day and this person just did this for me. Or like I recognize God in this person. And instead of just kind of brushing past it like we usually do, you start to take inventory of it in your mind and become a lot more grateful for the things that you have. And then also sins start to sting your heart way more. You start to recognize how much they really do affect other people and how much they really do affect your own soul. And like you can start to develop sensitivity to all these things through this prayer. It's a great tool. It's not the only way to achieve like spiritual growth. It's not necessarily, it's definitely not the only way, but it's a great way. And I just want to share this quote with you from this Swedish philosopher / theologian that I like to read sometimes. And it's kind of a confusing quote, but I think it's kind of what we need right now too. So it says, perfection lies in fullness of journey. For this reason, never think you have arrived. Forget what lies behind you. Reach out for what lies before you. The very change in which you lose what you have snatched up, you will at last be transformed into what you crave for with such longing. And it's kind of, I don't know, it's super intellectual kind of, but the biggest thing I'm getting from it is like never think you have arrived. And he's talking about the spiritual life. Never think you've arrived yet. Because it creates a stagnant soul within you. And I've definitely been there before where like, oh, like they've given me everything I want. And that's cool. Like I think I'm at like the height of my prayer for right now. So I'll just kind of, take a step back. But no, like we've never arrived yet until we arrive in heaven, which we're still breathing and living right now, so we're not in heaven, just so you guys know. So we're not done yet.